You're listening to Psych with Mike. For more episodes or to connect with the show with comments, ideas, or to be a guest, go to www.psychwithmike.com. Follow the show on Twitter @PsychWithMike or like the Facebook page @PsychWithMike. Now, here's Psych with Mike.
Welcome into the Psych with Mike Library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan, and I'm here with my good friend and colleague, Mr. Brett Newcomb.
I love it when you say that.
Which part? Good friend or colleague?
Both.
Because
gives me some identity.
Yeah, well, I am very aware that there was a period of time where I was an experiment for you.
Oh, I thought I kept that better hidden.
Oh, no, you used to tell me that all the time. I don't know how you thought it was hidden when you used to say that. You used to say, like, those words to me. Well, you're just really an experiment.
Well, I mean, if you were feeling anxiety about that, it's exactly what I wanted you to feel, because anxiety can be a motivator.
Yeah.
And I was trying to motivate you.
Well, if
you don't turn your assignments in, you're going to fail.
I was initially reluctant to believe that you would care enough about me to want to be my friend.
Well, and I understood that.
And you said,
there were reasons why you should.
But I'm in a period of my life where I'm trying to be a better friend.
Someone. I'm trying
and
to find
I'm using
a loser that I can bring along
as an opportunity to try and polish a turd.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, thanks. That's wonderful.
Okay, now you're making me anxious.
Yeah. So, do you get anxious?
I must. It's part of the human condition.
Yeah. But I don't know that anxiety is a part of the human condition. And this is why I say that, because where even if there are other psychological conditions that may be actually linked to some kind of chemical imbalance or some neural processing, I don't think anxiety, I've always believed anxiety is a thought disorder. And so if you can correct the thought disorder, then you don't have anxiety. So what I mean by that is that anxiety, generalized anxiety other than the fear-based anxieties, I believe we should make a distinction between fear-based, non-fear-based anxieties.
Okay, and say more.
So fear-based anxieties, which are like post-traumatic stress disorder, things like that, those actually are ways in which the brain processes information incorrectly. So instead of the cortex, which is the area of your brain where rational thought lives, processing information first and then giving information to the limbic system, which is your emotional center, and then that triggering the fight or flight response, when you have post-traumatic stress disorder, that's turned upside down. You just immediately get into fight or flight and you don't ever process the information. But generalized anxieties, which are situationally based, you always process the information first, and those are the result of cognitive dissonance, so the inability for the human mind to hold two conflicting thoughts comfortably. So I want to ask a girl out, but I'm afraid of rejection.
Right.
That's a conflict, and the friction of those two ideas rubbing together in our brains causes what we consider to be anxiety. So if you don't have any cognitive dissonance, if you don't live with that and you don't fuel that on a regular basis, then you could live fairly anxiety free. My question would be, is the human condition such that a person can do that?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Because I think things happen. I mean, I recently I was reflecting on your question about anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'm very situationally anxious.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it does happen, but it's really rare. If I'm in a dangerous environment and I'm Jesse Jackson talking about walking down the streets of Chicago, being followed by a group of young black males. It said it made him anxious just because they were there and because of the reputation of the area and the community and so on. I've had that experience. I remember hitchhiking through Hartford, Connecticut in the Spanish section, being followed by a bunch of teenagers because I was obviously an outsider, didn't belong in that neighborhood, and they wanted to know who I was and what I was doing there. I felt some anxiety while they followed me to the edge of the boundary, and then they went away. They didn't do anything. They were just there. But I felt anxiety and was asking myself questions like, how'd you get here, stupid? This is not where you should be. Get out of here. I had a cancer scare earlier this year. And I had a lot of anxiety about, well, if I have cancer, I'm going to die. And do I have cancer? Am I going to die? And is it now time to make my peace with that and figure out, how to get from here to there to an acceptable death?
Right.
Assuming I have anything to do with that at all. Or do I? And so there's a lot of existential anxiety. So I think that may be the two types of anxiety that you're talking about. One is a situational existential anxiety, a baseline level of anxiety. One is an immediate reaction to a set of circumstances that could be scary, causing you to have a reaction. So I don't think I'm very prone to one, but I think I'm prone to both. So I don't know how to answer your question.
Well, I had originally asked the question because of all of the people that I know. You demonstrate what I would consider observable anxiety the least.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
And I've always thought that. Now I've been in situations and I've seen times where I know that you were anxious, but that's pretty rare. And so what I wonder is, because anxiety is just so ubiquitous now in society, it's actually overtaken depression as the number one diagnosed psychological disorder in the United States. And so is that a real thing? Has anxiety overtaken it? Do we see it more? And so when we're treating it, are we treating it in a way that is effective and beneficial?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to the question because I don't have a global map for society. I try to see clients as individuals. When somebody comes in and they're struggling to digest something, they want to figure out what that is and try to find a way to help with that problem. Now, what I'm aware of doing counseling is that we may make progress on this problem, and when we take it off the table, another underlying problem, or what we call comorbid problem, will surface because it's like cards in a deck, and you play some down, but there are still some there. And I think life is a statement that there are problems, and you're going to experience having to encounter them and having to manage them and resolve them to the best of your ability all of your life. If you're alive, there's going to be something out there that you need to be dealing with.
Right. And I'm...
So being anxious about it, just saying, oh my God, I'm anxious, I'm frozen with anxiety, isn't helpful to me.
No.
So then my question becomes, well, what are the things that we can do about the anxiety? Can we reframe the way you define it, experience it?
Well, while I was listening to you talk, what I was thinking about was, at what point did things like psychological disorders start to become an actual thing? Like when we were hunter-gatherers, did we have the ability to experience depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder? And my guess would be,
even if we lived long enough.
Yeah, even if we did, it didn't matter because environmental factors were such.
You had to have the survival skills.
Right.
If they were survival skill enhancing, we had them.
Yeah.
If they weren't, no.
And so for me, a lot of what we consider mental disorders are really the luxury of our advanced society.
Oh, I agree. I absolutely agree.
Okay, you do agree with that.
I do. And I also think that a lot of them are artificially created by advertising. You watch Saturday morning television, Sunday morning television. Every ad is a medical ad.
Yeah.
And they don't tell you what the product is for. They show glorious, happy, sunshiny, smiling people because they take this drug, and then at the end of the commercial they give, don't take this drug if it can cause bleeding, it can cause heart attacks, it can kill you, you can't take it with other drugs, be sure to talk to your doctor about it. Oh, and by the way, if you have trouble affording it, we can get it to you cheaper.
And then we talk.
So then I sit around like, do I have that? Do I have that? So
I don't know, just call your doctor and tell him you want the medicine.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Well, that's magical thinking. Everybody's medicine cabinet is full of drugs they didn't take a full dosage of. Especially, I remember 20, 30 years ago, doctors were regularly talking about, we don't want to give people penicillin because they're going to be superbugs that come along that don't respond to those things. And sure enough, there were, and there are. And so now they've, I was in the hospital one time because I got bitten by a spider, a black widow spider.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I had my
I think it was a brown recluse.
Yes, it was. I said black widow.
Yeah,
that was a different issue. But
we're not going to talk about that.
But the doctor told me, you're in the hospital, and I was there for a week.
Yeah.
Because we have to put you on this drip antibiotic because we can't give you anything strong enough that isn't coming through an IV feed in your arm.
Yeah.
To kill this bacteria because it'll kill you.
Yeah.
So I laid in the hospital for a week waiting on the fight to be resolved while I read books.
No, I remember that, and that was terrifying. So if a lot of psychological disorders are the result of the luxury we have by living in such an advanced society, does that matter in the context of doing psychotherapy? Can you say to a client, a lot of what we suffer from is the result of how good we have it? Is that a message that matters?
Doesn't make them feel any better.
Yeah.
I mean, so what? The point is, I have it now. I'm worried about it. I'm upset about it. I'm in the hospital with something that's probably going to kill me unless this drug works.
Right.
So, what can I do?
But that's an extreme case.
That's where you get to.
Well, but most of the time we see people in therapy, they're not there because they got bit by a spider and almost died. They're there because, their teenager is back talking them and they don't have the intestinal fortitude to enforce consequences to make them stop.
Well, the societal support system. I'm a 5'2", 35-year-old woman with no husband and a job, trying to manage a 13-year-old who's starting to feel his oats and get in my face and tell me, you can't tell me what to do. He's bigger than I am, and I'm worried about it.
Okay, yeah, that is a situation. I didn't see a lot of people in that situation because we live in a fairly affluent part of St. Louis.
I had a number of clients that were dealing with that.
Yeah. And that certainly is much more problematic than the guy who is just so distracted by work that he's not really active in the daily discipline of the children. The mom is just furious because the dad is checked out. I mean, that's mostly what I saw in therapy. And to me, those situations are the result of, too much affluence. We're lucky that we have the luxury of having psychological disorders.
So do you whip out a chart of Maslow's hierarchies?
I don't.
Explain to them, you have meals.
This is
you have
more
a roof over your house.
Yeah, this is more of a kind of a intellectual argument between you and I as people who did therapy for a long time. But the goal is to discuss with clients what their situation is from their perspective in their reality. And I'm aware of that, and I try and do that. But for myself, I see a lot of psychological disorders as a luxury that we have because of the society that we live in, and that doesn't make them less real to the person. I understand that. But I do think that if an individual can put that in context, it could make it easier for them.
So, a couple thoughts. When you address, let's identify this, let's look at other options, other considerations. One of the things that people are regularly told is you can't think your way out of this. It's not an intellectual problem to solve. It's not a data-based resolution. The old Ben Franklin conflict resolution thing. Pros and cons, make a list, divide them up and weigh them out. I remember when I had a job in sales, they used to teach us what they call the Ben Franklin close. If you had a client, Mr. Prospect, who's considering, because you've been so forceful, your product, purchasing your product, and they're thinking, and you say, well, Ben Franklin had a solution for that. You take out a piece of paper and you draw a line down the middle of it, and you say yes and no,
Pros
pro
and
and
cons.
con. And you say, make up all the reasons for why this is a good decision. And then you help them with that. You say, well, it's cheaper, it's affordable, you get monthly payments, it's guaranteed for 5 years, it comes in multiple colors, whatever. And then over on the other side, Ben Franklin would put all the reasons for not buying it. And then you don't say a damn thing. You make them come up with it. And so if you're a trained professional, you've given them 20 things for doing it. You give them nothing for not doing it. They'll come up with 2 or 3. But then you look at the balance, and it's like, oh my God, that's an obvious decision. And that closes the sale.
Right. Okay, let's run to our break, and when we come back, we'll pick this up. Hey everybody, Dr. Michael Mahan here from Psych with Mike, and I couldn't be more excited to talk to you about Athletic Greens, which is a new sponsor we have here on the show. I started taking Athletic Greens, watching some YouTube videos, and doing my own research. I wanted to add something to my daily workout program to give me some energy and to support gut health. And that was the one thing that kept coming up again and again with Athletic Greens, is the guy who started the company did a bunch of research because he was having some gut health issues that he couldn't get any resolution for. He developed Athletic Greens, and it's just exploded from there. So it's 75 superfoods, vitamins, minerals, probiotics, whole food sources that's all in one daily scoop. You put it in 8 or 12 ounces of water, you shake it up, and you drink it. The taste is very, very drinkable. I actually enjoy it, and I have been using it, and my energy levels have just been through the roof. I really like Athletic Greens because of some of the sustainability things that they do. So they buy carbon credits and, to help protect the rainforest, which is something that I really like. But if you order Athletic Greens in your subscription, you're going to also get a year's supply of their vitamin D supplementation and 5 free travel packs. And that vitamin D is so important during those winter months when we're not getting enough sunlight. We've talked about how that decreases your mood and increases depression, and that can be a real deal changer. So you go to athleticgreens.com/emerging. That's athleticgreens.com/EMERGING. That's the Psych with Mike promo, and you're going to get that additional vitamin D support for a year and 5 free travel packs. So take control of your own health today. And as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike. Okay, so before the break, you had adroitly refocused us and onto what we wanted to talk about, which was anxiety and some of the ways in which people ineffectively try and deal with it. And so you're talking about this idea that I can think my way out of something, which is the message that we get from our Protestant upbringing, which is, hey, you should be able to think your way out of this situation. And you had given an example of a way that you did that in business. So are you saying that that works in therapy or doesn't work?
It does not.
Yeah.
Because it's not, you're dealing with an affective state, not an intellectual problem. So it's not a weights and measures kind of problem. Can we weigh this amount of anxiety and say, well, I've got 2 pounds of anxiety today, but tomorrow I'll have 1 pound.
Yeah.
And so, but we are conditioned to say we should be able to problem solve by thinking our way through it. Well, if I just focus on one credit card payment, leave the others alone, maximize my payment on the one until I get it paid off, then I can roll over what I'm paying on it into the next one and focus on them one at a time and solve the problem. So then I'll solve all my financial anxieties over time. Typically, it doesn't work that way because other things intervene.
Right.
Most people are not able to do that. Not able to do that for a long enough time that they have success. So somebody comes along, gives them another credit card, says, I can help you out here. Here's $500 that you can charge. And so they charge up to the max. They have 12 credit cards. They're all charged to the max. They're making minimum payments, and they're screwed. So you got to figure, how can I resolve this? But it's not as much a dollars and cents solution as it is an affective solution. Why do you keep buying stuff you can't afford?
Right.
What's the hunger driving the need to possess?
Right.
What are the feelings involved? Can we identify them and address the feelings that drive you, as opposed to focusing on the mechanics of operation that are the expression or the outcome of being driven by those feelings?
Right.
I need to keep up with the Joneses. All my neighbors have a newer car. We haven't bought a new car. My kids need to go to college, and everybody in town's going to this college. I got to at least be able to, so people get trapped in those binds that generate anxiety and, in fact, affective discomfort.
Right.
But they can't think their way through it.
But
a problem-solving situation.
We oftentimes talk about emotional economics.
Yeah.
And so I think what we're saying is you may not be able to think your way intellectually out of a problem, but you can consider what is the cost liability or the liability
cost benefit ratio
of my emotions, of my affects. So when you apply that,
but you have to feel the feelings first.
Okay.
You have to feel them, you have to label them, you have to externalize them. Then you can process them. If you just stay in your head and don't feel any of that stuff, you'll come up with logical solutions that don't solve anything.
Yeah.
Because you aren't dealing with the affect.
Right.
Which is the argument that's made in the article that you have listed about thinking your way through anxiety. The other thing that people get bound up in with regard to anxiety is thinking that they have to find a perfect solution.
Yeah.
That's sometimes the best solution is to throw a whole bunch of crap on the wall and see what sticks. And then among the things that stick, which one is a more attractive piece? And can you get there? But if you're invested in thinking there is a perfect solution, I'm going to not take a vacation until I get all my bills paid off and I can go and pay cash for my vacation. You may work your entire working life and never take a vacation. So then you say, well, the alternative is I can go on vacation, but then I'll just go deeper in debt.
Right. But I think that the intellectual exercise,
the whole yeah but thing,
is a way of restricting yourself to an action.
Yes. Or from an action.
Because you think, I'm investing all of this energy in trying to think about this problem, so I'm doing something, when in reality, you're not doing anything because all you're doing is sitting there thinking about the problem. And sometimes you just have to take an action, even if it isn't beneficial, just to get mobile. My
father used to say on a regular basis to me, son, you have to do what the fighter pilot does.
Yeah.
I said, I don't know what that means because I'm not a fighter pilot and neither are you, Dad. But it would be lead, follow, or get out of the way. Do something.
He could have been a fighter pilot.
No.
Yeah, because they say when the plane's going to crash, you got to do something even if it's wrong. Yeah. It doesn't. At that point, it doesn't matter
or
what
you're
you
just
do.
Riding on the plane,
right? Yeah. You're going to die anyway.
Yeah.
So you might as well do something, even if you don't think it's going to help. Do something. Don't just sit there immobile.
So I was raised in an era where the lesson that I learned is whenever you get in financial trouble, go get another job.
Yeah.
Get an additional job.
Yeah.
Work a second job. Work a third job. Bring in more income. Pay these so that you don't negatively impact your standard of living. So I became a workaholic. And I spent most of my adult life being a workaholic, working 2 and 3 jobs, working 70, 80 hours a week, making good money, but for much of my life, didn't manage my money. And just no matter how much I made, it all went out the other end. And it wasn't any better. So that was a real mental adjustment to recognize that solution wasn't a solution, and that other things had to be dealt with that I didn't want to deal with. They hurt, and going to work didn't hurt.
Right. And so, is that an example of trying to think your way out of a problem? Yeah. I'll just go get another job. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Which then actually kind of
I'll
felt
see
like
5 more clients this week.
Right.
That brings in money.
It kind of feels like that's a solution because you're doing something, but then it really isn't solving the problem.
Yeah. You're not changing anything.
Right. And then you kind of touched on the third one, which is to think that you have to pause everything until you
Until you
resolve
get this
the
one thing
anxiety,
done.
right?
Yeah.
And you were talking about not taking a vacation, and a lot of times that feels like good advice. Stop doing everything else and just focus on this problem.
Yeah. Right.
And that, I would even argue, that might be good advice if you were actually going to do something about the problem. But if you're going to pause everything else and just sit and focus on the problem and not do anything, then that's not really helpful.
So as a therapist, when you look at suggesting behavioral interventions, behavioral changes, one of the things that you can suggest that your client initially will think, you're really stupid, I'm paying you money for this and you're saying this to me. You have to challenge habituated automation. So an example that I would give to people, most of you get up in the morning and get dressed in the exact same way every day.
Yeah.
If you put your pants on first, you put your left leg in first, then your right leg, then you fasten your pants, then you put your t-shirt on, then you put your shirt on, then you put your socks on. What order do you do that? Well, I don't know. Well, think about it. Pay attention to it. I mean, just watch yourself, because you'll do it, and you'll do it the same way every day. So do it differently. What do you mean? I said, well, for instance, lay your clothes out tonight that you're going to wear tomorrow. And when you wake up in the morning, go take a shower, brush your teeth, do whatever you need to do without opening your eyes. Come back in and get dressed without opening your eyes. You always put your wallet in your left hip pocket, put it in your right hip pocket. Do something different. And be aware that you're doing something different. Notice the difference and how uncomfortable it makes you. How comforting it is to have an automated ritual. Because we have to break the rhythm of the automated ritual. And so even stupid little things like put your wallet in a different pocket give you an opportunity to say, whoa, I'm going to do that differently. So you challenge them to do little things that are under their control. You can decide this morning not to have 4 cups of coffee. You can decide to have 3 glasses of water. Oh, that's stupid. Well, no, it's really not if you make it as a proactive choice. And then we can decide.
And it's really an exercise in being able to get out of the comfort zone.
Yes.
People don't recognize if
Automated
you live with
habituation.
anxiety,
Yes.
that's your comfort zone. People say, well, I'm uncomfortable with my anxiety. No, you're not.
Yeah.
Because if you were uncomfortable with
like an
the
old
anxiety,
friend. Yeah.
right, you would not live in the anxiety. And so that's something that I think people get stuck with, is that they assume that because they say to themselves, I feel uncomfortable with my anxiety, that means that they're out of their comfort zone. No, that's what you know.
Well, and so then there are classic defenses, resistances we call them, against challenging the anxiety-provoking situation.
Yeah.
One is, well, wait a minute, that's not logical. I have to think my way through it. One is, I have to find the perfect solution, because less than that won't solve the problem. So it's got to be perfect. And the third one is, I can't do anything else until I find this solution.
Right.
So those mental traps are defenses that preserve the anxiety.
Yes. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
They stop you from being able to work your way through the anxiety to an actual resolution.
Yeah.
And, that touches on this 5th one, which is people believe that if they didn't have anxiety, their lives would be better. And that's just not true, because as you and I started this discussion,
You just have different anxieties.
Exactly. You're going to having anxiety is an artifact of the society that we live in. And now if the world goes to hell and we have a nuclear holocaust and everybody's living in survival mode, people are going to have less anxiety.
That's why millionaires...
Because they're going to be living in survival. Would that be better? No, that wouldn't be better.
Millionaires can never have enough money.
Right.
They have to have $1 billion. And billionaires can never have to have money. They have to have more, because you always got to have more, because enough is never enough.
Right.
Even if you have more money than Jesus, you still have to have more, because what if somebody took some away from you?
Right.
What if somebody used control of the state to limit what you could do with your money? Like the Jerry Reed song. What's this song? Country singer had a song about playing dice in the alley, and they were going to put him in jail. And he said, "Who's going to collect my welfare check? Who's going to pay for my Cadillac? If I'm in jail, I can't do those things." rich people have the same issues. You know, it's not so much I got to pay rent. It's like I got to pay $50,000 in property maintenance for all my houses.
Right.
You know, and so I have to make more money.
And that's the trap of anxiety that those individuals live with. Right. And so the question is, if you gave all that up and said, okay, I'm just going to live on the beach and, you know, not worry about making money.
Well, we did a podcast a few weeks back, and you spent a considerable amount of time talking about messages from the Buddha, about not being invested in things, owning things, having things, doing things, but just being as a goal for life in which you didn't experience anxiety. And so I am not capable of citing the references that you cited, but you were making the point that your understanding of the message of the Buddha was the less invested we are in things, attachments, relationships, the less anxiety we will experience, the less suffering we will experience, the more at one with the universe we become, and that was a goal of life. So
do you agree with that? Do you think that's...
I'm not smart enough to know. I just, we were talking about someone who's negatively and adversely impacted by anxieties to the point that they're crippling. How do they deal with them? One of the ways, if you could get the perfect Buddhist solution, you wouldn't feel them because you wouldn't have investment in those things, those agendas, those needs, those goals, those desires. But being a normal person, which is a given, I got them, you got them, everybody I know has them. How much do they interfere? How much of a problem are they? That's what brings some people to therapy.
So, and we'll go out on this question, but if we're correct in what we're saying, that anxiety is a part of the human existence, there's no way to separate that out, then...
Control the volume.
Yeah.
Is the goal.
Can an individual monitor their own anxiety, or do you think that it is necessary for someone to get some outside perspective?
I don't think I don't have a single answer to that. To me, it depends on how much distress are you in. Do you have the resources to moderate it yourself, or do you need help?
Yeah. It's my old adage about no one goes to therapy because they have a problem. They go to therapy because a problem they have causes them emotional dysregulation.
Right.
Yeah. So the message is be less anxious.
Yeah. As Nancy Reagan used to say, just say no.
Just say no.
Just say no. But don't just say no to contacting us if you have a question or a reaction to today's podcast and would like to be involved in topics for the future.
That's so beautiful.
I'm a professional.
The music that appears in Psych with Mike is written and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue, and the thing that we always would appreciate is if you listen to the show and you want to do us a solid, find us on the YouTubes and subscribe to us there. Find us on Apple Podcasts and leave us a review and a comment. That is super, super helpful. And as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.